Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a session with Dr. Lara. Today, I wanted to dive into something that's really passionate and something that's very close to my heart, which is gut health. So most of our products have got some sort of gut healing complex in them. We've got probiotics for general well-being and health, our ultimate care, and then we have probiotics specifically for women. And within our female collagen and our also unisex collagen, we have probiotics built into them too. So the reason why we have done this is because personally believe that if your gut isn't healed and if your gut hasn't got a great microbiome, pretty much everything falls apart. So this is why we're talking about the gut today. So Dr. Lara, what makes the gut so important?
Sure, it's also a topic very close to my own heart, and I think it boils down to growing up. You hear these anecdotal old wives' tales. Firstly, the one is to trust your gut, and the second one is you are what you eat. So always come back to, I love bringing it back to diet, because essentially the concept of you are what you eat is so vitally important, and it's hard to almost pinpoint where to start telling the story, because what we eat has not only an impact on the nutrition that our bodies receive, so the vitamins and the minerals, but it also nourishes our gut microbiome. And in doing that, so let's take 10 steps back. What is your gut microbiome? Right? Essentially, you get good bacteria and you get bad bacteria. So in our stomachs and basically in our whole GI tract, from our mouth right down into our intestines, we have this beautiful mix of bacteria. And these bacteria are what help us live and thrive, essentially. They are able to extract nutrients and compounds out of molecules that we can't. So they essentially help us digest our food to the most optimal level that we can actually extract the most nutrients from it. Now, we live in a society where our gut or our microbial diversity has significantly reduced over the years. The diversity is so important because you can imagine we eat a variety of food. You eat sugary foods, you eat fatty foods, you eat starchy foods, right? So there are bacteria for all different types of foods that help you metabolize different types of food. So if you now eat a diet that is predominantly only fats, short carbohydrates, saturated foods, and sugary foods, your gut microbiome is going to be skewed to only that type of food to help you digest that kind of food, which means that the other types of bacteria will actually diminish in their quantity because it's a fine balance. Essentially, they compete for each other, right? So the more you have of the one, the less you'll have of the other. Microbial diversity is so crucially important because of the variety in the diets that we eat. And now what's happened is, if you imagine how we've, as humans, have evolved, we've gone from picking our own foods, literally picking, eating, and exposing ourselves to soil bacteria, the bacteria on the fruit. By no means advocating eating sand, but I'm just highlighting the fact that we have reduced our contact to potentially good bacteria. We also live in a society where cesarean births are more than natural birth. And one of the biggest ways to get exposed, or one of the earliest ways, I wouldn't say the biggest, but the earliest ways of being exposed to microbial diversity is through the birth canal.
Wow.
Very interesting, right? And also, if you think about COVID, right, we would spray alcohol to kill bacteria. That same thing, when we consume alcohol, is what it's doing to our gut. So it's so important. And the reason why this diversity is so important, because of the diversity in our diet, is, for example, our gut and our brain have this beautiful, intimate connection where they're constantly talking to each other. And that's why, follow your gut. That's where the saying comes from, follow your gut, because your brain and your gut are so closely linked. A good example is, for example, you can eat a lot of food that is tryptophan containing. Now, tryptophan is this amino acid that is the precursor, so something that's needed before we make things like serotonin and GABA.
Okay.
So now if we don't have the bacteria in our stomachs that can break down the tryptophan into the precursors that is needed to build serotonin and to build GABA, you can understand how there'd be a disconnect between the brain and the gut.
Okay. And where do you find tryptophan? Like, what is the primary food source?
Tryptophan is quite high in nuts, grains, and eggs.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Shit. Someone Google.
God damn it, lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? Where do you find tryptophan? So, I'm glad that you spoke about the whole diversity thing. So the one thing that I know has been on a huge rise at the moment is diets like keto, carnivore diets. So obviously popularizing the whole high protein intakes, low carb. By no means am I saying one diet is better than the other. However, one thing for certain, on these high carnivore diets and these high protein diets, we know that we are eliminating your fiber and your green veg because it is seen as the no-no list there. So from what I'm understanding then, it's vitally crucial. Important to include these things in your diet. Fiber you might be shredded, but you will be constipated.
Mm-hmm. Not only constipated, but your gut bacteria will not be happy. Essentially, we need to feed them. So things like your high cruciferous vegetables, anything high in a fiber source is beneficial and hugely beneficial to your gut microbiome, because essentially that is the food that feeds them. They then from that create these beautiful byproducts that our body needs to thrive essentially.
Okay.
And you can understand, so it's quite interesting to look at when we're feeling emotional, our first thing is to eat sugary foods and have a slice of cake, for example, have 5 slices of cake. But unfortunately, what happens is we feel lethargic and feel lazy on the couch. And that's a direct consequence of what we're feeding our gut microbiome. It's just not happy. And that signal and that communication between our brain and feeding our brain from our gut, that connection is kind of lost.
So there you have it, guys. Like, not only is looking after your gut vitally important for your overall health and well-being, but also just for your mental state as well. Like, trust your gut. You're constantly feeding messages going up and down. Make sure you prioritize your gut health first. It is important.